Hello, Cape Fear. Welcome to AfterThoughts. This is where we sit after the sermon and just kind of discuss some of the things that came to mind for the one that didn't preach and just basically talk about it. And this morning, Thomas preached 1 Thessalonians 1:1. And he went 1:1 through 1:10. No, all of chapter 1.
All of chapter 1.
Whatever the end of verse is. I can't think of it. I don't know what it is. But it was good, and one of the things that I wrote down that let it off is how much you can't stand small talk. And I was thinking, as a pastor, I'm not so sure if that's a good thing to share, how much you hate small talk, but honesty, it's good.
Yeah, very honest this morning. But I mean, not all small talk, but it's one of those things that, again, I don't thrive on it. So
yeah, I realized after pastor got put in front of my name and people found out about it, because you know I like to go incognito.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as people find out about it, they just totally change how they interact with you,
mm-hmm.
and it goes straight to small talk, and it is infuriating. It is. I'm with you. So, but I found that funny, and you basically were talking about how Paul just does not mince words and just jumps right in and goes for it. So, as you went through, you did your 3 R's as the recovering Baptist preacher that you...
4 R's.
4 R's.
There are 4 R's.
What did I miss?
There was a response, reception, resemblance, and report.
I missed resemblance. Missed that one. 4 R's.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, it was about faith, hope, and love. And when Paul said, and I'm going to kind of just jump into the second part when you were talking about, or when Paul says, you know the kind of men we were, and you imitated us. And we talk a lot about virtue, and we talk a lot about, basically just quality of character. As pastors, imagine being able to walk in, spending significant amount of time with someone and saying, you know who we are, and just being so confident and strong in that you want people to imitate you.
Mm-hmm.
And I say imagine that, not because I think I'm doing anything shady or behind, but I feel like we've gotten insecure in what people think about us. And so Paul just goes, and he's not insecure about what they thought about him. He just says, look, you know who I am. You know who we were. And I really like that. And I like how you you were bringing that in. You asked the question, and I've got like a bunch of stars around it. And it's kind of what leads into this. If we remove the gospel of Jesus Christ from your life, would anything change? And if there's no change, there's no power. And so we know that when Paul asks that question, there's absolutely no, there's no insecurity there. There's no, he doesn't ask the question, hey, what'd you guys think of me? And you had brought up that your youth used to, they just related Wendy's to you because all of your stories went to Wendy's. And I'm sitting there going, I wonder what people would relate to me. I wonder if they're talking about Nick, what do they say? And I don't like the fact that I even have to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Because like Paul is saying, you know who I am. I want to be that confident.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be living a life in such a way that I don't have to even wonder, that I could just stand strong and go, you know how I live. You know what I am.
Well, even Paul, they hung out with him for at least 3 weeks. I think that's what we read in the book of Acts. It was like 3 Sabbaths. He did this before things got dicey. So there's also an element that when you're around somebody and with somebody significantly for a long period of time, you can't hide who you are.
Right.
And I think that's something kind of almost one of those missed points in the sermon that, churches, they can, for an event or for a thing, put forth this face, do this one thing, but to carry that through in the long term, that's that idea. Like, that's why what kind of men, Paul and the leaders were, rather than just, hey, how I acted this one time. He doesn't do that. And I think we as churches miss that, and that's why it goes back to that virtue. That's the whole idea, is that over time, that's what's going to show forth what's really inside there. And so I think that's why this passage in particular, like when I was reading it, like I really, really liked it, because it does make us step back and, are we confident enough to allow people? That's what I was going to say. There was years ago, I heard or I had read an example of somebody who was discipling somebody else, and he says, "You want to learn how to follow Christ?" He basically said, "Move in with me, move into my house, stay with me for the next couple of months, and you will see." And that's the kind of confidence that, that this is who I really am. You will see it.
Well, I mean, Paul, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? And you even said it in there. You said it's not him being cocky.
Mm-hmm.
It's him just, this is just who I am. And, in a world right now where pastors are falling, dropping like flies, left, right, up, down, and sideways. They are just falling off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what I got some ideas of what the big disconnect is, but, and I don't question my life as in, am I living right? But I'm not confident. I'm not to the extent that Paul is, that I want, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And so I found that to be powerful. I found that as leading a church, that it should be a requirement. It should be a requirement. And I like what you just said. Maybe we should just start having church members move in with pastors for 3 months. That's a good idea.
I don't think I said it quite like that. I said there was a guy who once said that.
So we're going to put somebody on your couch for 3 months. And I like this plan.
Right, on my couch?
You go first.
I get to go first.
It was your so if there's any volunteers to go live on McCuddy's couch for 3 months, hit us up. And
you're going to get a message from Stacy later.
No, but think about that. Think about the transparency and the confidence that takes to say, yeah, come and live with me. Come and be a part of this. It is who Paul was, and then it is who the church of Thessalonica be. That's who they were too, right? Like, that's what he's saying. That report coming back saying, "Hey, you guys are doing good things," or "We're doing good things." I don't know. Mm-hmm. We'll move into the rest of it, but he's saying, like, you guys, the report came back. It's good. It's good. And then you said, so just sally forth. I had to look up what sally forth means, but
I think I played too many medieval kind of games. Like I just knew the terminology, and I was like, I remember when I said it, I was like, maybe I should. There's a quick moment. Maybe I should explain. And I just like squirreled out, but
I wrote down they sally forth. Question mark.
Like literally, like gather the troops, go out, make it happen. Like that's where many times that's what they would do. Go out, meet the army. You've got something to, don't, just trickle. Mm-hmm. Like, go make it happen, whatever it is. And I think when you looked up, you said it's like go and you're going on this adventure. You're the whole imagery from the medieval time is there's the gates are opening and the troops are just flooding out. That's should be our mindset, but I think most of the time we're more of just kind of like poking along and meandering and whatever. I feel like that's a lot of the church.
That's what it rolls into is, what is the report for Cape Fear? Because that was kind of the question you asked, is what is the report in the end? And you had said before that someone showed up and like, oh, I didn't even know this place was still open. Mm-hmm. Bad report, right? Bad report. And I think one of our focuses the last few years has been to actually engage with the community and do something more and sally forth and to leave the church doors and move out. And I'm not saying we're obviously, doing everything that we could yet. I don't know if any church is at that point, but we are definitely trying to get that good report from the community. We're engaging in arenas that we really haven't done in quite a while or ever.
But I think it's also the quality of what we're trying to do. Like we're trying to actually engage. I think that a lot of churches engage in more like PR campaigns with some of the things they do because we're so that becomes some of our mindset. Like we take what we've learned in corporate America, and it's like, oh, we can do this because this will really help our image. But the idea is, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing in the Lord, you don't have to worry about your image because people are going to know who and what you are.
Yeah, I mean that's as you go and as you're going through Bible college or seminary. I mean, those are the types of books that you're assigned to read, is how to do those things. So our first 3 years here were, I don't believe I ever once said invite someone to church for our first 2 or 3 years, because it was the focus was not about those, measuring success by the growth or by the numbers or whatever.
No Pack a Pew Sunday?
No Pack a Pew Sunday. Is that a thing? Pack a Pew Sunday?
Oh, gosh. Yes.
I have missed so much not growing up in church. Yeah, we've never had a Pack a Pew Sunday. But that was never a focus for us, because we wanted to focus so deeply on the faith, hope, and love. We wanted to focus so deeply on the spiritual maturity because how can a church how can a church get a good report? How can a church do that as they grow if there's no foundation? I'm not saying there was no foundation, but that is, I mean, we were mildly lacking. And so that's what we focused on so deeply. And then that's why recently we've finally been able to start going out in the community and kind of looking outward a little bit more, because we're not struggling so much with our spiritual maturity and our growth, I don't think.
Right.
So I think our report is at least getting better. It's improving. We're on the upward swing for sure.
Well, and that goes back also to that concept of virtue. It has to be practiced, and it takes a long time. So church is not going to change overnight. I mean, that's the only way you do that is to gut everybody who's there and just put different people in there.
Yeah,
that's how you change overnight.
We're not doing that. Yeah,
right. But I mean, that's, if you're going to become that kind of church, there's a sense that in many ways the Thessalonians, I have to imagine, like, and this is why I teach these kinds of these virtues, these ideas. If these people who were there were just naturally and already kind of fearful, timid kind of people, when the gospel comes, it would have taken a while.
Right.
But they were already, in a sense, they already kind of had these human virtues, and the Holy Spirit found in a kind of a good soil and blossomed from that. And that's why it goes back to so important, the discipleship, the way we raise our kids, all these things, because there's a sense when Jesus comes, and I know that I've had this conversation with some people, that if the Spirit moves you to do something and says, hey, I want you to do this, and you don't have the qualities necessary to do that kind of thing, you can't. You'll buckle. And I've heard people who've told me, like, our faith is not there yet. And that's why we as a church, that slow growth is still growth. There's a sense, and I've referred this in another church where I was like, I want a freight train. It's going to be really slow to get it going, but once it is, that momentum, it's unstoppable.
Right.
And that's a good thing. It doesn't have to spring up overnight, because I think what happens, what Jesus says, those that like grow up really, really quick, it's because they don't actually have root.
Right.
That's not necessarily the best. We want root in themselves. That's just going to take time.
That's good. I mean, I'm not complaining about time whatsoever, but I think it's important. And so as you're listening to this, or as listening to the sermon, the question, if you feel like you're not prepared, if you're ill prepared, like my faith's not there yet, or, I don't have that faith, hope, and love the way that they did. And so you can either use it as an excuse, or you can use it as a metric to look at and go, I have room for growth in these areas, and I ought to do that. And I should find a Paul. I should find someone that I can imitate, someone that I can, model myself after to grow. And I think way too often as Christians, as men, as women, that we just use it as an excuse. Or we use the excuse, I'm imperfect, or all of those excuses.
Well, we're just so much trained in our culture. We want it now. Everything must be microwavable.
Everything. No crock pots.
We can't, you can't cultivate that quickly. It's just going to take time.
Well, good sermon today, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the conversation. And we will we'll talk to you guys next week.